Hello everyone, and a happy new year to you all. You can tell it's a new year because there's a new calendar on the wall. Oh, that rhymed. And to start off the new year, I wanted to have a conversation about something that's kind of been floating around the fandom for a little bit, ever since it was revealed that the snowman scene in the Church on Ruby Road was an addition by Disney, as you can see Russell explaining here.
So this was the very last scene to be added, and I'll tell you why, because Disney always tests the first episode, and they tested this, and people wanted to see the Doctor earlier, simple as that. And they came back with that note, and I was like, well, actually, okay.
And that is Disney creative control or creative input on new Doctor Who. And I wanted to put together this video with all the evidence we have so far as to what Disney's involvement is, as well as kind of giving my own input on this, to kind of not only quell some fears, but also, for myself, bring up one additional fear I do have going forwards. But before we get into it, if you could do me a teeny tiny little favour and click that subscribe button, it'd be very much appreciated. We just passed 23,100 subscribers, and we're trying to get to 24,000 subscribers for 2024, so any support would be greatly appreciated on that front. But with that said, let's get right into it. So first of all, I feel like I should break down the snowman scene a little bit, because personally, I do think the decision to add it was a correct one. In this instance specifically, I know some people, once they heard it was Disney, were a little bit unsure. For me, I do agree with the sentiment that I think we needed that scene to really show off Ncuti's Doctor. It just so happened to be one of my favourite scenes as it was, before I realised it was a Disney note, before we knew it was a Disney note. And yeah, personally, whilst I enjoyed a lot of the opening to Church on Ruby Road, I did feel that we needed more Ncuti there, because obviously I get wanting to do the Rose thing of focusing on the companion, but at the end of the day, the show is Doctor Who, and it's brand new Doctor, and Ncuti Gatwa is there to make an impression on the audience. So I felt adding that scene in that's very Doctorish made sense. Him introducing himself as Doctor, occupation not a doctor, saving someone from a falling snowman. It all felt very in character, and I think the episode would have been weaker without it. So in this specific instance, I do think Disney had a good note here. I'm going to be getting a lot of my information from Doctor Who magazine specifically. I believe it's issue 586. Russell says that there is a Disney note saying that the opening of episode 1 of the new season wasn't as fun as the other episodes, so they redid the opening with a more expensive, exciting opening. Now, obviously, it's too early to pass judgment on that because we haven't seen it yet, but this is a sign that Disney are giving notes. Now, the one fear I do kind of want to quell here is that shows getting notes is not an uncommon practice. Indeed, even with Doctor Who, that's always been the case. I remember Stephen Moffat talking about how the BBC were like, oh, you promised us this year's Olympics, in reference to Day of the Doctor, so they got John Hurt in, because John Hurt was a big name, and they wanted that star power for the 50th, basically. Personally, I would have preferred Paul McGann. Nothing against John Hurt, I just wanted to see more Paul. But this is a sign that nothing makes it to screen without at least being given notes by a company of some kind, whether that's the BBC, whether that's Disney. And indeed, I'm not sure whether this is the case, but obviously we know that HBO, I believe, had the streaming rights to Doctor Who before this, so I don't know whether they had any input. I don't remember anywhere saying definitively whether they did or not. If any of you have any sources on that, I'd love to know. But my point is, every show gets some form of notes, and as Russell says, American co-producers giving notes is not uncommon. But yeah, I do want to quell some concerns about that, in that things are given notes all the time. However, there is another aspect to this that I wanted to talk about, which is the Doctor Who-iness of it, if that's a word. So one of the questions given to the team is, some DDM readers might be wondering how this collaboration between the BBC and Disney will affect the tone and content of the show. They'll be anxious that Doctor Who doesn't lose its individuality or its Britishness, or that often cited indefinable magic. How can we still be sure that it's Doctor Who that we all know and love? Now, their response to this is interesting. Their response is pretty much just, it's Russell. It's Russell T Davies. He's the reason that Doctor Who is maintaining itself, and that indeed Disney has bought into the vision of Russell T Davies. Now, I know for some of you who are perhaps not sold on RTD's new vision for the show yet, that might not be the greatest of comforts. For me, I am enjoying RTD's new version of Doctor Who. I'm enjoying the more fantasy aspects, and I do trust Russell to at least maintain the core heart of what Doctor Who is. I mean, this is the man that revitalised Doctor Who way back in 2005, and is the reason we still have Doctor Who now. So if there's anyone I trust with the show, he is the one. My personal concern with that, though, is less Russell himself or less that whole arrangement, and more so what happens when Russell leaves, because Russell has said before that he felt needed with Doctor Who going to a streamer. He felt that there needed to be a shepherd into that streaming age because the BBC were always going to do a streaming partnership. That's also mentioned in this magazine. So he felt that it needed a safe pair of hands to kind of guide that in, rather than Doctor Who essentially being thrown to the wolves with a team that was brand new or perhaps didn't quite understand Doctor Who in the same way. Which I personally do very much agree with. My concern, though, would come when Russell T Davies leaves, succession-wise. What if a showrunner comes in who is less experienced, got less street cred, for lack of a better term, in the TV industry, and has less of the ability to say, no, we're not changing that? A younger showrunner or a less experienced showrunner might be more enchanted and allured by the prospect of Disney and might cave to more of Disney's requests than perhaps Russell might otherwise. And I suppose the concern there is, if Disney do stick around beyond Russell, which, I mean, we don't know how long this deal's going to go on for, I worry that the new showrunner, whenever they come along, probably not for a good few years yet, but I worry that they might not have the ability to say no to Disney as much. Because Disney is such an industry giant, and if they're getting a role on this big British show, they might not want to upset Disney. You know what I'm saying? With Russell, he could have done anything he wanted, frankly, and he came back to Doctor Who. So, as far as he's concerned, he's earned his stripes. You know what I mean? He doesn't have to prove anything. He's already a successful man in his own right. But I guess the concern I would have is that if a less experienced showrunner comes in, and it's their, like, big break, and Disney are still giving notes, is that showrunner, whoever they may be, going to have the mental fortitude to say, actually, no, I don't agree with this, we're going to stick with this? Because there's also something in the commentaries that I found interesting, where they say that Disney's audience, the American audience, were confused as to what a pram was, and they thought it was a stroller. And Russell says, oh, well, you couldn't call it a stroller in Britain, that'd be ridiculous. So there is an indication at the very least that Russell can kind of say, no, we're sticking with it, and from a script level, it has to maintain that British quality. But if we have a new showrunner, is that going to be the same? That's my core concern with this. Everything else I'm pretty much okay with. Like I say, so far I actually think Disney have been giving relatively good notes. The notes are also pretty common with every TV show. I do understand, though, people's concerns in so much as I get that Disney can be a bit scary to some people because of their handling of Marvel and Star Wars respectively. For a lot of people, has been less than ideal, and I do completely understand the concern of Doctor Who turning into that. But, as is very much noted by Julie Gardner in this, it is still the BBC show. They still own Doctor Who, so it's not like those other cases where they have complete control, it's their property. That's not the case here. Nothing is going to make it to broadcast without the BBC also having to sign off on it. So I think in that case, it should retain more of its kind of original form than it would otherwise. But I do completely understand the skepticism. I don't want to write it off as just conspiracy theory, because I get it, I do. The one thing I will say is ridiculous, though, is the idea that Disney is somehow making it more woke. If anything, Russell is probably more progressive than most Disney things are. He even kind of, way back when, kind of chastised the handling of LGBT stuff in Loki, saying it was very kind of lackluster. So if anything, I think that's more Russell's influence, and Disney are just going along with it because they're buying into Russell's vision. And also, I suppose, on the more cynical end, if people were having a go at Disney for it, they could say, well, it's not us, you know? It's a BBC show. We just have it on our service, and we give it a little bit of money. It's their decision at the end of the day. So, yeah, there's that aspect to it as well. But that's extremely cynical. But let me know in the comments below what you think about this. I wanted to put this together to kind of quell some fears, but also ask some questions with regards to the Disney stuff. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts are. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoy my content in the new year. I've got tons of stuff coming up. Thank you for watching, and I will see you later.